Honoka, and you're watching the Cooperative Podcast.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Cooperative Podcast. Tonight we are interviewing Miss Kira Buckland. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi. We're going to try this again. We had some technical difficulties.
Yes. And I suppose I'll just go on down the line here. We have Reapers, if you want to introduce yourself, man.
Hey, yo. What's up, everybody?
Awesome. And we have the host, Renegade Operative.
Skype really sucks, and hey everyone, hopefully you're having a good night.
That it does. We actually had to try this again. This is the second recording, by the way. It's tech issues. But yes, we also have Devil Hunter James. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
How's it going? And yes, Skype is terrible.
Yep.
Or maybe it's just my internet. I don't know.
You sound fine now compared to before.
you sound better. So who knows? I mean, sometimes it is internet issues, but
still a mystery.
Yeah. Last but not least, we have Kaneki.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Discord Master Race.
Indeed. All right, so I suppose we should get right into it. I have a document here with a lot of different questions, so I guess I'll take the first one. To break the ice, let's start off with your experience with being a voice actor. What personal tips would you suggest to the viewers interested in voiceover work?
So I feel like my answer is not very unique because it's what every other voice actor says when you ask them this question. But the reason that they say that is because it is absolutely true and important. A lot of people think that they can do voice acting because they've been told they have a good voice, or they can sound like a bunch of characters off this show or that game or what have you. But when you think about really memorable voice acting performances, it's not necessarily because the person's voice sounded good or interesting. When we think of good performances, it's because the acting was good. They made the character believable and brought them to life. So that acting is ultimately what's going to drive a performance and determine who's going to get cast. Because yes, your voice has to fit the character, but you have to make that character believable. And then the other piece of advice that I give is to start online. There are so many more resources now than there are, like 12 years ago when I first started doing it. There's all sorts of casting sites online and places you can go to do it as a hobby to kind of understand what it's like. And, because you can't really jump into doing something for a living if you don't really have training or experience. So doing it as a hobby and taking some classes will really help you kind of get started.
Yeah, that's very true. I see a lot of people online doing amateur voice work, so that's internet is a very good resource to use for that. Is somebody who wants to read the second question?
I'll take the second question.
All right.
So how long have you been doing voice acting work, and could you name off the list of characters you have done?
Well, the list is very long, so I will just name a few. I have been voice acting total, including my time doing it as a hobby, for about 12 years now. And in terms of actually doing it in official projects, I think my first official role was in 2008. So since then, I would say the most, maybe the roles that I've done that people might be familiar with are I am Trucy Wright in Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice. I'm Hiyoko Sayonji in Danganronpa 2, Umi in the English version of Love Live, Edna in Tales of Zestiria.
Yes.
Honoka in Dead or Alive Last Round.
Yes.
Yeah, one of you has a Honoka avatar. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess we should move on to question number 3. Somebody want to take number 3?
Take it.
All right.
Is there a game series that you ever wanted to do VO work for but never got the chance?
Oh, absolutely. My favorite game franchise is Guilty Gear, and they're not really doing English versions of the new game, and traditionally they haven't in the past. There was one game that they did, and that was it. But that would be a character like Dizzy, especially, would be my dream role. I actually dressed up as her and met the creator of the game. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, the stuff that I play, I want to do more fighting games. then something that I really wanted to be in for years and years was, of course, the Ace Attorney series. So that was like a dream come true, getting to be in that.
And that's awesome. Okay, so any takers for question number 4?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Is there a role that you felt proud of, that it was one of your best roles that many people might not know about?
Bloodlad, and I play a character named Hydra Bell, and that to me was one of my best performances, I think, because it just felt really natural, and I had so much fun with the character, and I really got into it. Like, you know, sometimes I'll be recording for a character and we'll just be doing take after take after take for hours, and you know, sometimes it can get frustrating because I feel like, why can't I get it just right? But with Belle, it was one of those things where it's like we were doing 1 or 2 takes and we had it. And I don't know, I just felt like that was a really fun role and I liked what I did for her. But not a lot of people have heard about it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those series not a lot of people know about, but I've heard it was a good series. So
I read some of the manga. It was really good.
yeah. Okay then. I guess I'll take number 5. What's your personal favorite video game character in terms of look, voice, and presentation?
That I've played or of anything?
Anything,
I
really.
think anything. Yeah,
Maybe both.
Yeah, in general.
both.
Okay, so, Well, I recently played a character in a game called Paladins. I actually didn't even know that it was out because I talked about this briefly on Twitter, but it was under a code name when we recorded, and you know, a lot of times we're just not told when games come out that we're in. So I found it by accident because someone said, "Hey, is this your voice?" And I played a character named Evie in that, and she just looks really, really cool. She has blue hair and like a cool outfit, and I had a lot of fun with her lines because she got to be really big and crazy and over the top, and I really like playing those types of characters. Like I said, in terms of, you know, design and gameplay wise of obviously characters I haven't played, Dizzy and Jacko from Guilty Gear are good examples. Ina from King of Fighters, Akiha from Melty Blood. Obviously, I play a lot of like 2D fighting games and stuff, but
Oh yeah, I
Jury
love
from
Melty
Street
Blood.
Fighter has a really cool design. Yeah.
I think my personal favorite character that you played in a video game was Edna from Tales of Zestiria.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I love her voice. But anyways, number 6. Somebody want to read that off?
Guess I'll do it.
All right.
What do you think of the latest voice actor strike that's been going on lately?
Oh, well, I've actually been posting a lot about that on Twitter recently, probably too much, but so I think the whole thing is, it's a very complicated and there's a lot of strong feelings from all different sides, and I actually understand both sides quite well in terms of, for example, the residuals. I agree, I have mixed feelings on that because, as a lot of people have put forth, these game developers and artists and programmers who are working just nonstop. Like, I have a friend who works in QA for games, and he is just expected to almost constantly work 60 to 80-hour weeks because they have to get these games out schedule and what have you. And so I agree, it's like, well, you know, we get to come in and record for a few hours. But on the other hand, when I hear about people who do, say, background voice work for TV shows or movies, and they get residuals from those, and, you know, just why is one medium getting residuals when others are not? Or like people who do commercials, voiceover, they get residuals. So I guess that's kind of like the two sides to it. And at first, I was actually very against the idea of the residuals because I felt, well, you know, most of the games that I work on at least are kind of low budget. So it's like, how are they going to afford that? But then what the union is proposing is that it only hits at a certain amount. So when a game sells, I forget the exact number, but it's all online. Like, you know, they sell this many million copies or they make this much money or whatever. That's when it starts kicking in. So it actually wouldn't affect the smaller low budget games. But I think, well, there's a couple other points. One of them being, and a lot of people are misunderstanding this one because I was looking at Will Wheaton's blog post today and reading some of the comments, which is probably a very bad idea because they made me very angry.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, those are not good.
yeah, so one of the things proposed is to limit sessions that are vocally stressful, meaning a lot of screaming, growling, that kind of stuff, to 2 hours. And somehow people were getting it in their head that, oh, voice actors only want to work for 2 hours a day. Well, I have to work for 10 to 12 hours a day and this and that. But I mean, the reality is that we do work more hours a day than that if we're lucky enough, or, you know, with our day jobs or what have you. But specifically for those sessions that are going to destroy our voice, because it's easy to say, oh, well, you know, it doesn't sound that bad screaming for 2 hours. But if you think of it in terms of the other night, for example, I went to a concert, and just from trying to, like, the music was very loud, and just from trying to talk over it, and I didn't realize at the time, I still have a scratchy voice 2 days later, and I couldn't talk properly to record some of my stuff yesterday. So it's like when you lose your voice, you're basically out of work. So it's not saying that, oh, voice actors don't want to work you know, a reasonable amount of hours. They're saying that if we're going to do something that literally destroys our voice, then we need to be smart about it in a way that it's not going to, like, make us unable to work on anything for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that I kind of disagree with on that is, if I'm understanding it correctly, the union is proposing they want payment for a full 4-hour session, and to me, I don't think that's necessary. I feel like you should get paid for the hours worked. The current, at least for most things, the standard is a 2-hour minimum. So if you come in and you record stuff for an hour, they still have to pay you for the 2 hours anyway, which kind of makes sense because, you know, if, say, you're driving somewhere that's really far, like I did a couple sessions last week that I had to drive an hour and a half each way to and from. So, you know, that kind of covers, so you're not just coming in for 15 minutes sort of thing. But, you know, if I'm going in and screaming for 2 hours and that's the most they can book me for that day, then I'm fine with getting paid 2 hours. I mean, obviously we all want to get paid more. Who doesn't? In the scheme of things, I think that's fair that you get paid for the actual hours worked, and getting double pay for vocally stressful sessions. I mean, well, it sounds good in theory. It's, you know, for one, how do you classify whether it's vocally stressful or not? Because a lot of them will just argue, okay, well then, so that we can avoid that, we'll just split the screams up into, like, all the smaller sessions so we don't have to pay extra, or, you know, what have you. It's, I don't know. I agree with not making them do a marathon session if it's something that's going to wreck their voice, but I don't think that saying, oh, you have to pay them for 4 hours is a good idea.
Right.
And it makes...
And then oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just quickly going to say it makes sense because every voice actor we talked to previously, they hated the screaming sessions so much. They really just despised them because of how much it tears up their vocal cords.
Yeah, it can be hard. I mean, obviously not everything we work on is screaming, or sometimes there's just a few lines that really need to be called out, and that's okay. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I work on is JRPGs, so they're not very scream heavy, but you know, I imagine if somebody's working on, like, a survival horror game or like a military, like, first person shooter type of thing, everything's high intensity, so all the lines are going to need to be yelled. And especially if you're doing a character with, like, texture in the voice or anything like that, then it's you know, just a lot of extra work.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so number 7. Somebody want to read that off?
Oh, actually, one more thing, if you don't mind,
Yeah, sure.
that I just wanted to mention in regards to union strike, because this is something that I was talking about specifically on Twitter today, and that is the counter proposals, because obviously the union has put forth these agreements saying, well, we want this and this and this, and so some of the game companies and publishers actually responded and saying, okay, here's what we're asking for. And the very first thing was they wanted to be able to fine the actor up to $2,500 for basically anything they can arbitrarily deem as them not being attentive. So that means, again, you have a session that takes an hour and a half to drive to, and you leave 2.5 hours early just to be safe, and all the roads are closed or something. You have to be 10 minutes late. You call them well in advance and inform them. Well, they can fine you to $2,500. If you get an emergency call, like you have a family member in the hospital and you're like, hey, I just need to leave my phone on just in case because I'm expecting something very urgent, they can fine you $2,500. If they think you're not fully paying attention for whatever reason, they can fine you $2,500. And I actually saw several people defending this in the blog comments, and one of them was saying, well, I hired an actor and she just sat on her phone the whole time and was checking texts in between her lines. And I'm like, okay, well, in that case, you be an adult, you be a business person, and you say, hey, we hired you for this job. I really would appreciate it if you'd give it your full attention right now and turn your phone off. And if it's a continued problem or they give you attitude about, then you don't work with them again. It's, that's how most people work in actual business. And so to want to punish somebody for, a situation that happens that's beyond their control, or, I don't know. It just seems absurd. And I think they fully know that it's absurd, but they're saying, okay, well, this way the union will back down on their demands, and that's not really
crazy.
what happened.
It's
insane. You can be fined just for not paying attention.
Yeah, it sounds like.
I mean, it sounds very vague. It's like what constitutes exactly not paying attention.
It sounds like.
Yeah, they said, somebody could be like tired. It's like, I mean, okay, to give you an idea, I've had a session where I sometimes work overnight shifts at my regular job, and I came off of a graveyard shift, and then I had a 9-hour recording session. And I had to have the 9-hour recording session because I was going on a trip the next day, and that was the only way we could get it done by deadline. So it's like, I'm sorry if after, being awake, I was awake for almost 48 hours, and it's like, but that's one of those situations where when you have to make a living, it's unavoidable. And I still gave it as 100% as I could. But when they're proposing these things, like what I tweeted today, I was like, imagine if you went to work at your regular job and your boss was like, oh, hey, you need to be 5 minutes late because, there was an accident or something, and, or you got pulled over, what have you. Well, we're going to fine you $2,500 when you're not even making that much. Like, I don't know. Some people were also misinformed. They're like, oh, well, voice actors walk away from a game making like 5 figures. I'm like, maybe if you're like a celebrity that they cast on a name recognition basis, but that is not the norm. And so if this fine were to be enacted, voice actors would literally be paying to work on the game. And who wants to take that risk? Who wants to be like, I'm going to go and wreck my throat screaming and walk away at a loss if they find me for whatever arbitrary reason?
The way this sounds, it sounds like it's really meant to be the other way around. Like, you are supposed to be compensated for your work instead of just going through all these hazards to get there.
Yeah, and like I said, I agree with some of the criticisms as well, because I have people who work on the other side of it, and they're like, well, hey, if, the voice actors get paid extra, why don't we for all this mandatory overtime? And I think they need to be compensated too. I think, from what I understand in that field, just like in the voice acting field, one of the major issues with negotiating for things is that there are so many younger and less experienced people who will just jump at any chance. Like, there are people, you could say, like, I even see it on Kickstarters. Somebody will do a game or a show on Kickstarter, and they'll be like, if you pay $5,000, then you get to have a bit part in our thing. And people do it just because they want that opportunity so much. So, when you have so many people lining up for voice acting jobs and game development jobs, it's hard to negotiate for anything better because there's so many people who want to take your job for a tenth of what the standard is.
Yeah. So it sounds like a really complicated issue. But yeah, I can see why it's kind of a bad thing.
Hopefully it gets resolved.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, because that's the other thing is we can't work on most games until it's resolved.
Oh yeah, I heard
Yeah,
about that.
I can see why.
What?
They had a short list of all the studios that aren't really accepting any voice actors because of the union.
Wow.
I mean, if they want to have no game, that's up to them.
Well, one of the arguments people are putting forward is they can just get anybody to do it. And so I tweeted a video of this game called Chaos Wars where the CEO literally got his wife and kids to do the voices. And it's the most horrible, laughable sounding thing you can ever imagine. It's like, okay, you want to bring in non-professionals to do the voices and say it won't matter? Well, this is it.
Almost as bad as the Titus laugh. No, I kid.
You can bring anybody in to do voice work doesn't mean they're going to be good at it.
That's true.
Yeah. But I mean, the other fear is that a lot of games are just going to, or game companies are just going to say, screw this, we're going exclusively non-union. And that is a very real fear for a lot of voice actors because if they're saying we won't accept any talent who is, even though a lot of actors do both, if being in the union whatsoever disqualifies them from being on this project because that project doesn't want to deal with the strike, and I have seen this happen a couple times, then it's kind of like we're screwed because we can't take those jobs no matter what.
Yep. So that all being said, I think we should probably move on to number 7. Somebody want to read that?
I'll take it.
All right.
If you had an opportunity to create your own video game, what would it be like?
It would be a 2D kind of air dash style fighter because, that's what I like to play. So, and the characters kind of fight with like different elemental powers. Sort of like when you think of Pokemon, how they use like, you have one that uses like lightning and stuff. But sort of in the vein of Guilty Gear, there's a lot of references to classic rock and stuff like that. So I believe the character who used like the lightning thunder kind of stuff, he had a super called Thunderstruck, as a reference to AC/DC and stuff like that. And with the character designs, we had them all over the place. Like the character that I was gonna voice in this fictional game was like a raver girl on a skate or roller skates, and there was like a traditional Japanese priestess, and there was like a street punk guy and like a fire user. There were also and there was like a huge like wrestler character and all sorts of stuff. So I actually had like plans and super moves.
Sounds interesting, actually.
Sounds like a variety of characters.
Yeah, and if anyone listening is interested in at least checking out, because obviously the game is just something that's like created for the story at this point, but the story is called Dragon Star, and we have like a Facebook page with some concept art that my friend did, and he's been working on the animation for it.
Nice. Yeah, we'll have to, definitely go check that out. So I think we should probably move on to number 8. I guess, does anybody want to read that one off? If not, I can read that.
Which one?
Number 8.
Do it.
Okay.
Do you have any
Or I can read it in a different voice and pretend to be a different person.
You could do that.
Just kidding.
Actually, you could do that. Why not? A little fun. I'm going to put it in the chat, and you could do whatever you want, actually. Let's see. There you go.
Was somebody going to read it, or do you want me to just answer it?
Oh. Never mind. All right.
Thanks a lot, Reapers.
Well, she offered. I was like, okay, we'll do that then.
I was joking.
I think we all took you seriously.
You got the slip, Reaper.
That acting was way too good. He's legit, that's for sure. All right. Do you have any other voice actors that you appreciate in the industry? Any personal favorites to list off?
A lot of my friends, to be honest, because those are the people who really kind of inspire me to do better and improve at what I do, if that makes sense. I mean, there's obviously some really top voice actors that I've never met that I look up to. I mean, like for video games, who wouldn't want to be able to do the kind of stuff that like Laura Bailey or Ashley Birch or Jennifer Hale does, you know? But like some of my friends are going to be major characters in Persona. I cool, and I would love to be able to do something like that someday.
Oh, like a Persona game?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love Persona.
Huge fan of the Persona series.
We know.
Persona
Reaper.
5, baby.
Shut up.
Okay then. Let's see. Oh right. I think next is number 9. I guess I'll read that one. Have you been to any conventions to meet the fans, or do you have any big plans to go to one?
I mean, I'd love to do some. I've done a couple, but they kind of want people who are well known. So I'm not really quite at that point yet where I'm like known enough to be requested, unfortunately. But I've also like gone to some just for fun. You know, I live in LA, so I try to go to Anime Expo with my friends every year and things like that.
Yeah, conventions tend to be pretty fun to go to regardless. So number 10. Who wants to read that one?
I can.
All right.
As a professional voice actor, are you a fan of film, and has it influenced any of your voice acting?
Yeah, for some of the games that I worked on, I was actually a really big fan of one of the shows too, because I worked on the English version of Love Live for the anime, and I'm a huge fan of the mobile game for that. Like, I'm super addicted to it. I'm a ridiculous level, may or may not have spent actual money on it. And in terms of being Trucy Wright, I've been a fan of the Phoenix Wright games for literally a decade. I've played and beaten every game in the series. I've made parodies about them, and fun fact, a parody I made in like 2009, I actually cast myself as Trucy, so if only I knew, right? And Danganronpa was the other one, because I had, this was before the games had actually come out, so we had to like read and watch the playthroughs, but I did that for the first 2 games, which is what was out at the time, and I was like, man, I really wish I could be in the Danganronpa series and this and that. And then they did the second game, and I didn't even have to audition for it, which was really cool. That's like the best thing ever when that happens, when they're just like, oh, we want to cast you for this character based on like, you know, other voice samples you've done or whatever. So that was really cool. The thing that I'm the biggest fan of personally is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So if they ever animate part 6 and make an English version, I am so on that. You have no idea.
You thought this was an interview, but it was I, Dio.
Oh, I think they're showing the English version on Toonami. If I'm not
What, for
mistaken.
JoJo?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Toonami.
I don't got Jolene on there yet.
Yeah, it's always weird when you're like a fan of something and you end up being, you know, a part of that project.
Oh man, it's like the best thing ever. You must be like a kid in Christmas when that happens.
But yeah, I think we should move on to number 11. Somebody want to read that one?
I can do it.
I got
Again.
it.
Going once, going to.
All right.
All right. What are typical mistakes that you can make regarding voice acting?
Oh, well, that's pretty broad. So do you mean in terms of like performance-wise, or like when trying to get into the business, or like what?
I guess when you're in the booth and, you know, mistakes tend to happen because, you know, we're human beings. We're all not perfect. So whenever, like, we mess up on our lines, or if we have some mistakes that we're not quite, like, ready for a role yet, I think that would be one of the mistakes regarding voice acting. Like, maybe some preparation, not being too ready, stuff like that.
Oh, I mean, I made so many mistakes. Like, unfortunately, sometimes it just happens. Like, a lot of things are learning experiences, and especially if you're kind of new, thankfully, a lot of people will be patient with you. Um, I mean, I think sometimes it you'll have sessions where maybe the client is really picky, or maybe you're just like you're having some technical issues, there's some enunciation issues, and so for whatever reason or a combination of them, you get asked to retake a line lots of times, and it can be very easy to feel like, I guess, kind of frustrated, like, well, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I get it right, sort of thing. So I mean, if you're like messing up on a line, but it doesn't always mean you messed up. Like, I've had it before where sometimes I'll deliver a line the way that, the way that I would think or imagine, like whatever my instinct is, because that's usually what you want to do for your first read. And then the director will say, okay, try it emphasizing this word. So you do that. Okay, try emphasizing this word. So you do that. And then sometimes maybe they'll go back to an earlier version, but they just want to be able to have the option to kind of see. So I think, and I mean, this is something that I still have a problem with, but I've been told that, the main thing that I hear for why, like, if someone says they don't like working with a certain actor, is that they're like under. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
Hello?
it seems like everything's back to normal. We had some issues for a minute, but it seems like we can hear you get again. But all right. I think we should probably move on to number 12. Somebody want to read that off?
What's the hardest role you've ever played? Can you describe how and why?
As long as you guys can hear me, then.
Yeah, we can hear you pretty good. Okay. Did you get the last question, by the way? I'm not sure if you heard.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Hear.
James, you want to reread that?
Sure. Give me one.
I think that was number 12.
How are you doing this to me?
Try moving closer to the mic, by the way. Kind of low.
You might want to read it because I have some technical issue right now.
Okay. I'll read that. What is the hardest role you've ever played, and can you describe how and why?
One of the hardest roles that I ever played, and I'm actually not going to mention what the role was because of the reason why it was difficult. I don't want to, make it sound like I'm disparaging anybody or any project or whatever, but I had a role once that it was just very difficult because it was a new experience for me. I was doing much longer sessions than I was used to. I was working with a new place. A lot of the people who were forgiving of mistakes or whatnot, when I went to this place, they're kind of like just expected that you'd be on point. And so, when I messed up, I would feel very self-conscious about it. And like some of these sessions were just so, like, I felt like I was doing so bad and I just couldn't get it. We were doing tons of retakes, that sort of thing. So I would just like go home and cry after my recording because I felt so bad. And I didn't get recast. Like, it's, I continued to play the character and this and that, but it was just like, I mean, it was very tough for me, but I think it was also a good learning experience because as much as it's not fun to be like, I guess, kind of like called out on things that you're doing wrong, it's helpful that you don't continue to make those mistakes. So it's like, yes, it was like kind of tough love that I ultimately was good, but was hard at the time.
Yeah, it's kind of like a learning experience. All right then. Let's see. Number 13. Does anybody want to read that?
I'll do it because I couldn't do the last one.
Okay.
What's the best and worst thing about voice acting in your experience?
I think the best thing is when the project comes out and you get to play the game or watch the show or what have you with this character that you voice. That is the most exciting thing for me. I just got my 3DS stolen, unfortunately, but I was over halfway through the latest Ace Attorney, and so Trucia's case too. So I got to play the case where she shows up, and it was just like, it was so cool. I played the cutscene over and over again, like I would save and then restart parts so I could keep watching it. Or like obviously my absolute dream and goal in life was to be a playable character in a fighting game. So when Dead or Alive Last Round came out, I kept refreshing the store to see when I could buy it, and then just like playing as Honoka nonstop for like the first month. I think the worst thing is disappointment and rejection, because sometimes things are just going to happen that make you feel terror. Like there are some projects that I would love to be a part of, but I wasn't in with the right person, or maybe I did try to email that company and just response, and it's not always to do with how good you are. Sometimes it's who you know or who you are friends with, and it's situations like that where you feel like I really want to be in this project or in with this company, and I'm trying to do everything right, but nothing's working. They're not, sending me auditions or whatever. That can be really frustrating. Or, I mean, I would say that we're all very supportive of each other overall. Like my friends and I are all really happy for each other if one of us gets a role or something. Sometimes even if it's like a role that we were up for as well, we're like, oh, well, cool, my friend booked it and they're probably a better choice anyway, sort of thing. But it can be hard if, say, like, all your friends are in a really cool project and you're like, well, I kind of wish I'd got a shot to try out for that or whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's also the financial parts of it can be good and bad as well, because when you're doing well, it's like, yay, I get paid to do what I love doing more than anything. But the downside is sometimes there will be times that go by where you don't book work for a really long time. So, well, it seems like, oh yeah, the hourly rate you make from something is awesome, or this and that, and people don't understand. That was another thing in the union strike. They're like, well, voice actors make such good money on a game, for example, why are they complaining? And somebody's like, because that may be the only thing they work on all month, So it's really not, yeah.
Yeah, I know from one of the previous voice actors we interviewed that voice acting is really not enough to live off of. You really have to have other jobs, and it's really hard
it can
financially.
be if you get extremely
depending
established and you're doing stuff all the time. But it's like, it's difficult too, because a lot of people who just aren't in that field, they don't understand what being an independent contractor actually means. Like, you don't get any benefits, you don't have any guaranteed employment. Like, yeah, you will play your character for the continuation of your contract, and then hopefully if there's a sequel they'll bring you back or whatever, but you're not guaranteed. Like, you don't work for a specific studio or company, they just call people in. That also means taxes don't get taken out. So when it comes time to pay your taxes, you will owe literally thousands of dollars, because that's not taken out during the year like a normal paycheck would.
Yeah, okay. So, let's see. I think we're on number 14. Does somebody want to read off number 14?
I'll do it.
All right.
I'll take this one, you'll take the other one.
Okay.
All right. So, is there any future roles you can talk about to get us excited?
Oh, I mean, I can't really think of. Most of the stuff that I've been doing recently has like not been super exciting. It's kind of just been like mobile apps from home and like corporate narration and nothing. That's the other thing. It's not always exciting, or certainly not prestigious work. Sometimes you're just doing whatever. But yeah, I can't really think of like any. I think all the stuff that I can talk about has already been released. So.
Oh, well, that's fun. Okay. So last question, number 15. I think Kaneki wanted to read that one.
Sure. Number 15. In closing, is there any more tips you would give for aspiring voice actors?
So the first thing is to learn to act, whether it be through acting classes. There's also one out there now, like on YouTube and Google and what have you, just for where people will tell you about it. Then I was trying to find a book at the library about how to get into voice acting or what have you. You can also listen and observe when you're playing a game or watching a show, or even if you're listening to a commercial for a major brand, just kind of seeing what kind of talent is currently booking and what qualities are kind of getting them hired, if that makes sense, because it can give you ideas that you can be working on. A lot, but, just kind of starting as a hobby, and even if you want to do voice acting but you think it sounds fun, then starting as a hobby is a great way, because obviously wanting to do this for a career requires a lot of financial investment, a lot of time, a lot of sacrifices that you want to be really sure that you're willing to make.
Yeah, that's good advice. I mean, that's obviously it does help to observe and take inspiration from that, and just that, like I said before, there's a lot of different ways to get into voice acting now. There's a lot of amateur voice actors out there, so it's more accessible, I think, nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's actually all the questions. So, now is the point in the podcast where we're going to do outros, and outros are basically just plugging your social media and whatnot. So basically like where we can find you on social media, stuff like that. So like shameless plugs. So I guess we'll obviously start off with you, Kira, if you want to just tell everyone where we can find you on social media.
Yeah, my Twitter is at Rina-chan, RINACHAN, is at.
Okay. So I guess next I will go with Reapers. Where can we find you, man?
You can find me on Twitter, on YouTube and Twitch at Reapers240.
Okay. Devil Hunter James, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at DevHunterJames and twitch.tv/TheHeroJames.
Awesome. Kaneki.
You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube on the same name as School World Order.
Okay, awesome. Renegade, if he's still here. I don't know if he's alive or not.
You can find me on Twitter at RentOperative_. You can find me on YouTube at Renegade Operative.
All right. And last but not least, you can find me on here at the Cooperative Experience, and you can also find me on YouTube at Captain Cast, and you can find me on Twitter by the same name. So, yeah, this was a very fun interview, Kira. It was a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad we
No problem.
made it work despite all the crazy technical issues.
Yeah, glad we finally got that to work.
It wasn't the most perfect in terms of the stuff that was cutting out, but I'm
Yeah,
gonna try the best I can.
we got
with
most
magic.
of it, though. I mean,
Yeah, I'm gonna try the best I can with magic editing. So,
Right.
I'm gonna make it look good as possible. So, yeah.
Renegade the
power.
Magician.
We did it, boys.
Editing Master Race.
Yes.
Alright.
all right, so I think this would be a good point to end it. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we will see you all later.
Hey,
Bye bye.
come on.
Bye.